Zwelinzima Vavi has until the end of business tomorrow to submit an explanation on why he should not be suspended. The Saftu General Secretary is being investigated for alleged financial and administrative violations. But the union's president maintains the pending suspension is not political. Well, Zwelinzima Vavi joins me now for that conversation. Mr. Vavi, I'm a bit confused. My understanding was that you had until yesterday to give reasons why you should not be suspended. But as I just read, we are saying that you have until tomorrow. Where do things stand? But importantly, have you submitted those reasons why the national office bearers of Saftu should not suspend you? Mr. Vavi, I believe you are muted. So if I could ask you to just unmute and start over again. Yes, I've got you now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. The first point I wanted to make is this, that ideally I shouldn't be coming to speak to you about some internal matter. Ideally, I should be coming to you to speak about the worsening crisis of unemployment, poverty, inequality, and what we ought to be doing to address that crisis that created conditions for Saftu to be formed in the first place. Unfortunately, as you now know, some factionalists would have leaked the letter of intent to put me on precautionary suspension to the media, and as soon as they sent it to me. So before I could even respond to that, suddenly the matter was all over the newspaper, the media, everywhere. And I'm now forced to respond to that because accompanying that is an attempt to smear my name, to present me as some corrupt person who is supposed to answer some serious questions that relate to transactions raising eyebrows, as they are continuously saying through the president of the Federation. I have responded to the letter to say, firstly, I was in a meeting on the 14th of March. In that meeting, a categorical decision moved by the second deputy president of Saftu, Thabo Matsuse, and seconded immediately by the president of Saftu, Mek Chabalala, that I must be placed immediately on suspension because they said the allegations, the transactions that they have just seen are quite worrying, and they require that I be put away so that I'm not anywhere office, presumably, so that I may not interfere with any kind of investigation. Today, by the way, I've put up that transaction in the media space, one by one, accounting for each one of them. Airtime, can you believe it? They're suspending me for buying airtime for provincial leaders of the Federation when they're joining meetings of the National Executive Committee that are held through Zoom for 2-3 days. They now threatening to suspend me for subscribing to Adobe, for posting Saftu messages in the Facebook, for putting petrol when the protector decides to bring the things that they need to protect me with in Cape Town when I'm negotiating with the taxi associations or going to KwaZulu-Natal, considered to be the most sensitive area security-wise. So I put all of that for the public to see and see whether anybody is going to raise an eyebrow when reading all of those transactions.
Because you've gone into that, the transactions, let's talk about them a little bit more. You're giving the reasons why the transactions took place. For instance, the airtime, that it was in furtherance of the work of Saftu, and the petrol that you're talking about, and Adobe, etc., etc. Were these, though, within your authority and discretion, I suppose, to the extent that they deviated from normal practice, normal ways of doing things? So, for instance, the airtime issue, I don't know how it's normally handled. If this was a deviation from the normal way, was it within your authority to deviate from the normal way of doing things, such that right now you see no reason why this should become an issue?
We've been holding meetings through Zoom since the normal became that we cannot meeting physically. From March 2020 until recently, Saftu have been holding meetings only through the facility of webinar. And they know that I buy airtime data for the provincial leadership to join those meetings, whether it is an NEC or political ideological commission or convening the meeting of the provinces themselves or having a workshop on this or political school on that. We have those meetings, and this is absolutely something they know is happening. For example, when the Deputy General Secretary of Saftu lost his phone, I have to buy him airtime and to cope, but also to join those meetings himself is recorded there. You would have seen transactions to buy him airtime. And so that's absolutely normal. The policy of the Federation allows me to take an executive decision about any matter that needs to be purchased up to a 5,000 rands. Beyond 5,000, I must get permission and I must get 3 codes. Anything below 5,000 is that. In the transactions we have seen now, you can tell me if there's one that goes above 5,000, and secondly, you can tell me if there's one that looks very suspicious that have to be explained. I have explained each one of them, and it goes back to the point that we are making, that they knew, by the way, that there is no such a thing as shocking and suspicious transactions. They were pursuing an agenda, and the agenda was put Zwelinzima Vavi on suspension and keep him there so that the NEC arrives next week, he's on suspension, the Congress comes, he's on suspension, and we deal with him in the CCMA. We know we will lose.
Who is behind that agenda?
The people behind him is the president of the federation and his handlers.
Who
in
are
the federation? His handlers are the people that are pushing him, by the way, to the deep end, who are making him to pursue this agenda. He knows that he have no mandate of any affiliate of the federation to pursue. The federation, if I may be honest with you, have been dealing with the political and ideological divisions for the past 4 years, centered around 2 things in the main. Around the big push from some individuals within NUMSA to get the federation to adopt the SRWP as a party of choice for the federation without any discussion, a typical imposition from the top. The federation have said yes, it agrees there must be a debate about whether we shouldn't be spearheading the formation of a mass workers' party. We disagree on that, and they suddenly, the people who are pushing that are wanting to punish me as if I'm the federation that is refusing to embrace the SRWP when I can't. My hands are tied together on that matter by the National Congress resolution that said that the federation is an independent federation. And even if it says that there is a need in the future,
I'm running out of time.
Look at the possibility of forming a party, but that can't just be imposed from the top. It must be a bottom-up approach to arrive at that decision.
I'm running out of time, Mr. Vavi, but I can't let you go without pointing out that what you just said in the last minute or so really is a bombshell, in that, you mentioned specifically NUMSA and the political disagreement that you have with them around the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party and their desire to have it adopted as the party of workers by Saftu. That is a big, big revelation, I would say. So could Mr. Chabalala's handlers be NUMSA? Is it Ivan Jim?
Not NUMSA. Some individuals in NUMSA are pushing this agenda very hard.
Names,
NUMSA is forming part of the Central Committee, have been part of the consensus developed from the National Congress, every Central Committee. But despite that being so, individuals and who are using their positions of power are attempting to undo constitutionally agreed to decisions of the Federation and impose a political party on the Federation. And if you don't agree or you don't kowtow to that decision, suddenly you must be investigated for suspicious transactions. Nonsense. That's not going to win in the Federation.
All right, Zwelinzima Vavi, I've got to thank you. I'm pretty sure we will be talking quite soon, and hopefully we can also hear from the other people whose names you do mention, people such as Mac Chavalala, as well as NUMSA. You didn't name any particular individual at NUMSA, but yeah, I do believe that perhaps a right of reply from their side would be due.